Welcome to Rosie the Reviewer. We're your hosts. I'm Sam.
And I'm Marcia.
And we like World War II media, and we want to talk about it. Welcome back to Rosie the Reviewer. This week we have another special SAS Rogue Heroes episode. Well, welcome back, George. First of all, our SAS Rogue Heroes correspondent and our font of knowledge on all things SAS.
Oh, hello.
We're also fortunate to have Bobby Schofield with us, who plays Corporal Dave Kershaw in the show SAS Rogue Heroes. You can watch SAS Rogue Heroes on BBC iPlayer, MGM Plus, and on Max in most of Europe, formerly HBO Max. You can also listen to our previous episodes on SAS Rogue Heroes wherever you get your podcasts. And as for SAS Rogue Heroes itself, Season 1 aired in 2022, Season 2 aired in early 2025, and we are waiting with bated breath to hear if there will be a Season 3. So welcome, Bobby. Thanks so much for coming to see us today.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. This is a pleasure. Yeah. Nice to meet with fellow geeks.
Absolutely. Feel free to go off on any historical tangents because we're constantly doing that.
Cool.
Not to play favorites, I was very excited that you would wanted to be on Rosie, Bobby, because obviously we love you as Dave, and I know you've just got something recently to come out, The City is Ours. But in all of my readings about the SAS, Dave Kershaw was quite an elusive character to me, so I'm just really keen to get into what you know and how you found playing it.
Yeah.
So I think the first thing that we just wanted to talk about was sort of how you came to this role and sort of what drew you into SAS Rogue Heroes.
Well, it was a bit of it wasn't a bit of a mad one, I suppose, yeah, because you sort of get, I mean, as an actor, you get numerous amounts of, self-tape and self-tapes or, readings or auditions or what have you. And I grew up always being fascinated by the Second World War ever since I was a little boy, and history, really. And I always remember being a kid watching the World at War at my nan's when I was really young, and then I saw there was a program in the early noughties called, I don't remember this, I don't know if it was ITV or BBC. It was a thing called POW, which was about I think it was one of the Stalag Luft. I think it was 42 or something. I can't really remember. I think it was sort of, it was fiction, and it was sort of set around these group of squaddies that were all mainly British that were captured in a POW camp, and that was sort of my sort of earliest memory of seeing these lads dressed in uniforms and jotting around a prison camp and swapping stuff for currency and what have you. And then I got introduced to Band of Brothers when I was about 8 and 9. And I remember just being absolutely blown away by it. Like, absolutely just blown away by everything about it. And I became obsessed with the, 101st Airborne and Easy Company. And, I sort of, I started to recreate Bands of Brothers with a camcorder in my garden. But yeah, I mean, when I'd look, back on playback, my dad would be like, so where's the explosions and all that? He'd be like, well, we haven't got the budget. So, you know what I mean? It was sort of, it was that what really drew me in. Sorry, I'm just going off on one here, but a sort of a fascination with the Second World War and with history, especially military history. So yeah, fast forward years later, and I really, when I was that age, I think I was 8 or 9, I really wanted to join a reenactment group, and there was a reenactment group called the Screaming Eagles, which was sort of based around Band of Brothers, but I was too young to join it at the time, so I was like, I wanted to collect, get a uniform properly, and get all my stuff, but by the time I was 11, 12, it wasn't cool, do you know what I mean? And I was a teenager, and I was too busy, smoking weed and, just being a teenager, basically. But always sort of found a fascination with it. And then I knew that I sort of wanted to get into acting when I was 17, and I sort of grew up around quite an artistic family. Like, my dad's an actor, and, a lot of my uncles are sort of musicians and what have you. So I was always sort of fascinated by that. And also The Great Escape growing up was, I think a lot of kids were into, getting read Harry Potter and books like that. But my dad was reading me Mouse. I don't know if Lonnie's ever heard of that. It's like an Art Spiegelman graphic novel, which is about Jews, basically. His dad, who was Vladek Spiegelman. And I always remember, like, you know, I mean, it seems like quite a dark story to read to a child, but I was always fascinated by the Second World War, and that's what my dad was sort of reading me that as a kid. And then, yeah, so the Great Escape and just all this, you know, and so obviously speaking to my granddad, who was in the Second World War as well, but he was a child. And my other granddad, my granddad Jim, was in the Navy in the Second World War as well. So yeah, just always having a fascination. And then fast forward, you know, years later, and I always wanted to be a part of jobs that were, you know, military based or had stories to do around, you know, military history really, because that's I think that's just what I'm really passionate about. And I've been very fortunate and lucky enough to be a part of a few projects that have been, you know, military based. You know what I mean? I did like I remember one of my first ones was a World War One drama on BBC. Was it BBC Three or what? I can't remember. It was years ago. World War. That was about the First World War, and I played Private Tom Andrews, and there was this brother called Andy Andrews, and you know, it's sort of around the PALS regiment situation where they'd let, you know, a bunch of lads join up from an area, you know, which they don't let them allow now because a lot of them were passing away together, and it was, you know, that time in the First World War. So then, yeah, with Rogue, it was I think I got a take through for, I think it was Jim Allman's, I think. Yeah, I think I read for Jim Allman's. It was something safe for Jim Allman's, and I was like, yeah, it's done it. And you know, I just thought, you know, this is like a bit of a dream job for me, because obviously I knew about David Sterling and knew about the formation of the SAS, and you know, there's a lot of sort of people out there speculating about his story on how it became, or you know, getting into GHQ and talking to the Orc, was it General Orkenlech? So it was, so yeah, I was always fascinated, and I knew so much about it. And I remember, I think my mum got me the book of SAS Rogue Heroes when I think it was 2014. So it was before it was even a telly thing or it was even talked about. So it was, I remember reading that and being like, oh, I remember, you know, I do vividly remember reading, you know, Dave Kershaw, the committed socialist, who was, who, you know, fought against Franco in the Spanish Civil War, you know, and then was one of the first original members of L Detachment. And I do vividly remember reading that. And then anyway, you know, how many years was, so that was 2014, 15, 16. So about 8 years later, then I get that tape too. I'm like, oh wow, no way. Never thought not much of it, done the tape and then cracked on. And then, yeah, my agent got in touch with me. I was like, oh, you know, they really like you, but they don't think you're right for Jim. They think you're right for, there's a character called Dave Kershaw. And I was like, I don't know who he is, yeah. But he's only like, no, he probably mentioned like, what, a sentence in that book? Yeah. Sort of like that. So I was like, oh, wow. And they were like, you know, they're wondering if you could tape for that part. So, I mean, would you be interested? I mean, it's not really that much of a big role. I mean, I'm not asked, like, just give me a gun and a couple of lines, I'll make it bigger. Like, this is what I love. This is what I'm passionate about. And, you know, so yeah, anyway, I've done a say for that, the director, as you normally do on a Zoom. And I was like, I remember years ago, I had an audition for Dunkirk, which was, you know, something else. Like, I was so, and that never went my way or what have you. But I remember going in the audition room and just saying, it was the director, Christopher Nolan. I was like, listen, I think I'd done a shite read, but I was like, listen, I'm not asking me, like, just give me a couple of lines in a uniform. I'm happy, like, I'll be in it. And he was just like, yeah, okay, thanks for coming along. And I never even got a couple of lines on a uniform in that. So I was like, never mind. But then, yeah, when this come along, and I was talking to Tom Shankland. You know, Tom Shankland was like the first director, and he sort of spoke like this, and he's quite eccentric, and, you know, sort of he's a lovely fellow and a cracking director. And I remember just saying to him, listen, mate, like, I'd done the read, and he was like, yeah, fantastic, that was great, let's do one where you're scared of him. I'm like, yeah, okay. I said, listen, I'm not trying to be like a, you know, a desperate actor here, but I'll literally show you all my books on my shelf, and I'll show you that like I studied the Second World War and like the breakup of Yugoslavia and the American Civil War. I said this is something I'm so passionate about, and I'd kick myself if I never told you this, but I'd love to be a part of it, like regardless. And then yeah, I got the part, and you know, I think at the time, the agent was like, I'm no superstar, I'm like I'm not like a name or whatever you don't want to call it, but they were like, do you want to take this role? It's quite small, and I was like, I don't care. So as long as I get to this is what I love doing. And she said, well, darling, you should have joined the army. And I was like, I just want to be a part of that. And then yeah, that come about, and it was literally like, it made me like sort of. At the 8-year-old me, like I relived it. I was like a child, you know what I mean? It was like, I don't know, it was just something that I was so grateful and so grateful to still be a part of. It's just like something that I can look back on, in years to come and be really proud that I'm a part of it, because it's literally like a bucket list type of job for me. And, that's what I mean. Because I think if I'm completely honest, if I wasn't so passionate about the subject, and I'd probably be really miserable on that, because it was like, don't get me wrong, it's an ensemble type of piece, and everyone's brilliant, but if I wasn't that passionate about it, I'd be like, oh, I'm just in the background doing it. But because I love it so much, I'm just like a little boy. It's literally, I feel like a little boy every time I go to working on Rogue Heroes. It's a dream come true for me, that job, definitely.
I love that. And has it always been the Second World War for you, interest-wise?
Well, yeah. I mean, that was my first sort of love in terms of history, and then the American Civil War. I really got into that when I was like in my early 20s or late teens, and then the breakup of Yugoslavia is a sort of big one for me. So if I can, obviously the war in Iraq, because that was sort of a prominent I was 10 when that happened. So, the second war in Iraq. So yeah, the Second World War is definitely my first love in terms of history, definitely.
I love that, and I think band is the way in for a lot of people. In my experience too, that was just such a beautiful series.
Oh, just you can't beat it. I mean, apart from Rogue, but no, being serious, you can't. But like you just, for me personally, and I've worked with so many actors as the years have went on when I've been an actor, and I've just been so like, and I'm not one of them to get starstruck, or I'm not bothered about, I'm just not. It doesn't faze me, any of that stuff. But like, if I ever work with someone in Bands of Brothers, I'm always like, oh, these are in Bands of Brothers, so. And there's an amazing. He's a director now. Cracking director, a fella called Phil Barancini, and I can't remember who he played in it. I'm gonna say, who was it?
Fisk.
Yeah. And I was working with him a couple of years ago, and he was an actor, and I was like, oh, Phil, have you got any like memorabilia from it? And he was like, oh, yeah, I've still got my helmet. I was like, oh, come on, man, let me buy it off you. Like, no. I'm like, let me buy your helmet. I'll buy his helmet from me off him. But and it was I worked with a makeup designer on it. He was on it, and he had like a sort of cap with the screaming eagle on, and I tried to get that off him, but he didn't want to know either. But yeah, no, Bands of Brothers is just it's unbelievable. Like and it was shot on film as well. I think there's a certain charm to stuff shot on film. I mean, I waited, a good 10-year period for Pacific to come out, and yeah, it was good, but it's Bands of Brothers, and it was the same with Masters of the Air. I remember, getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to watch that, and I'm like, yeah, it's just, it's not Bands of Brothers, and I know you shouldn't compare them, but if the whole marketing situation is by the producers of Band of Brothers, or I'm like it's Band of Brothers, like hands down. The characters, the acting, the actors that have come out of it, just an amazing, and I think that was initially what really wanted me to be an actor, was Band of Brothers, which is mad. Yeah,
that's fantastic. So yeah, it brings you to quite a nice little circle to then be in Rogue sort of
Yeah.
these years later.
Definitely. Yeah.
So the thing that I'm really keen to hear about, and you can ramble for as long as you like, because if the episode was just this, it would make me a very happy person. It's that any of the research that you did, finding Dave, looking into Dave, anything that made it in, I would love to hear about it.
Well, because, there's not really that much about him on the internet. It's very minute, and it was. I went on a bit of a sort of like my process as an actor, and that, I get like sort of obsessed with him and portraying in a mad way. But because this was like, I was pitching myself because I was in there. I remember. So it started off, and I was like, okay, I need to find as much information as I can about him, just to see what it was like. I knew that he lived on Birkenhead, but he was born in, oh God, I feel terrible now because I forgot. I've got all my notes in my book, but it's been 2 years since we filmed the last one. So, but anyway, long story short, I goes on this World War II forum because I'm trying to research. So I find on this World War II forum that there was a guy called John Rogers, and he's posted on an L detachment sort of group, and he's saying, my uncle Dave Kershaw was a part of the first L detachment, and he was a socialist, and he fought against Franco in the Spanish Civil War, and da-da-da-da-da. Wow, okay, I need to speak to this guy if I can get in touch with him. So the post was like 2000. The last time that post was like 2011. So I'm like, okay. So it goes on this forum, and it says he hasn't been online since 2015. So I'm like, oh, and he's obviously, one of them old people, that have obviously quite new to the internet, and they sort of put the details down of like, oh yeah, my name's John Rogers, I was a civil engineer, and and I'm from this area. I think he was from over the water. So I'm like, okay. So it goes online, and I send him a message. And he doesn't get back to me. And something in my head just went, he says he's going to be 80 on here. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I hope he doesn't. I just got this horrible feeling like he passed away. And I'm like, oh, I don't know why, but it was just one of them. When you just get a sort of weird feeling and you go, oh, no. So anyway, I'm like, I'm not leaving this down because I need to speak to someone who knew him or has some sort of connection to him because, he's an amazing man. And I think if it was my relative, and someone was betraying him, just to purely out of respect, just to literally check in with them and just say, listen, if you want to talk to me, fine. If you don't, it's okay. So I got a bit of trouble for this, but I got a private investigator, like a private detective. So I get in touch with a private detective company, and I'm like, listen, I need to find out. There's a guy called John Rogers. He said he was related to Dave Kershaw, who was, leading member, but actually the first phone call, and this fellow was like, he quoted me like 1,500 quid, which is, a lot of money, and I went, no, I'm not paying that. Anyway, I guess another number of this forum, and this Cockney fella just answers the phone and goes, hi mate, you all right? I said, yeah, listen, I need to find out a fella called John Rogers. I think he lives in Whittle earlier. I went, oh, all right, did you have your money? I went, no, he just not me money. It's just like, I just need to, I need to speak to him, go over a bit of research. He says, all right, mate, we'll get you 100 quid, and I'll get you his last known address, and where he lives and all that, and he's not on my sound. So we'll give this fella 100 quid. He gets back to me half an hour later and goes, right, mate, I've got you 2 John Rogers, one that lives on the Wirral, and he's 24, and then you've got another guy who's 79, 80, and I mean, he'll be in. So it's not the young one, it's this guy. So he gives me his address, and it's scary how quick people can actually find out where people are just by, you know what I mean? It's quite.
Yeah, don't think about that bit too much.
Yeah, that scared me. I was like, what? So anyway, I got his phone number, his address, and I thought, I'm not gonna go over. So I found this number, and this old woman answered, and she was like, hello. And I was like, hi, love. Bit of a mad sort of phone call, but Is this the house of John Rogers, and he was related to and related to Dave Kershaw? He was like, he was very proud of his uncle Dave. I was like, I'm an actor, and I'm actually portraying Dave in a new show, and I just wanted to speak to him because I seen him on a forum, and he seems like he's he's proud of him. It'd just be nice to, speak to him. And she was like, oh, unfortunately, he passed away last year. I'm like, oh. So that was that. But she said, I'll tell you what, I'll get you in touch with his sister. So I was like, okay, yeah. So she gave me this number, and I ended up speaking from this France number. And it was like this sort of really posh old woman. She was like, hello. I went, hiya, I'm da-da-da-da. And she spoke to me for like a good half an hour about her Uncle Dave. She was like, I sort of think he was very much a stern man. And, I can't really remember much of him because I was quite, he was a lovely guy. And I had seen him like once a year and, very much a laddie lad and all that. But she said, I'll get you in touch with my cousins, who were his daughters. So I was like, wow. So I ended up getting his daughter's phone number, and Patsy, yeah. So I ended up speaking to them, and yeah, I'm still in touch with him to this day. It was amazing to speak to him because I found out, what he was like as a, sort of like an old school type of scout. So, he spoke like my granddad and, that sort of quite placid type of fella. But, he was very much and she was like, he was very much a lad's lad, and, he loved his gambling, loved his betting. Didn't really speak much about the war. And yeah, so it was just lovely to really check in with his daughters, and she told me a lovely story, which made me really emotional. I get emotional thinking about it now. And she was like, when he was dying, it was like 1987. He done a documentary, I think it was called Sterling. The documentary's called Sterling. He said he went out of hospital and he was in a wheelchair and, went to like a studio or whatever, and they interviewed him, and yeah, so they interviewed him, and then he came back to the hospital, and she just gave birth to, I think his granddaughter was called Emma, and she brought the baby to the hospital, and he was like, held the baby for the first time and was like, I've like done my last job for the SAS, and I've met my granddaughter, and then he said that said, and he passed away that night. It's like, wow, just like wells me up now, we've been thinking about it. But you just think like that generation was just made of like different stuff, and it just really touched me, that, and I just wanted to, really, I'm still in touch with him now, and found out, he was he worked for the Cunard line, I think, after the war. He moved down to Southampton and became a bookmaker, became a bookies. So he basically he owns his own betting shop. And she just sort of told me like what he was like, and I spoke to her husband, and he was saying he was, he was sort of very much a, don't mess with my family type of thing. He was very sort of stern, like, look after me, girls and all that type of thing, very like just a caring, considerate man. And he took his military pension and then died. I think he died of lung cancer in 1987. Yeah, so that was my research into Dave. Man,
that's quite an exciting sort of extensive dive. But it's really beautiful that you got to speak to the family, because that's the kind of stuff that you don't get. Like the deepest search on the internet, you wouldn't get to find out what he was like as a person, right? And
you can read as many books as you read as many books as you want, but no one knows them personally unless it's the family. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I know they can speculate or say, oh, they were like this or they were like this, but unless you speak to someone who knows them every single day, sleeps in the same building, they don't. You know what I mean? It's like you get to know, but like his two daughters, Patsy, she's like obviously the socialist in him is but also out in there because she works in social housing, and the other one works the social housing and looking after people with mental health issues and stuff. So that's always been embedded to them off Dave, and it's just like I feel so proud and so honoured to portray him, especially being from my city. So I'm just so honoured to portray Dave, like so honoured. Well,
I think that really does come through. I mean, we were told about you that you like to ad-lib during the shows, and I think this is probably what fuels that. And Can you talk about that or anything that you've sort of dropped into the show? Because I remember Mitra and I watched it together, this series, on New Year's Day, whilst she was in the Netherlands, I was in England, and I texted her about one of your lines outside the bank where you'd said, no pasarán to Paddy. I was like, this is fantastic. This is Dave's history. And then we found out from Ben Simmons that this was an ad-lib. That was a thing that you do. Is there like anything else that you've sort of dropped in that way?
Oh, I'm terrible for it. I'm always throwing stuff in. I think it was because I had about 5 scripted lines the first season. I was like, right, I'm gonna make sure they know I'm here, so they know the one they're gonna use. You know what I mean? I'm like, I'm trying to think, but no passing. I need to be honest with you. I need to own, and I need to put my hand on my heart and be honest here. The no passing on is testament to the first director. Because when we were doing the first Rogue, but yeah, he said to me, he was like, there was a scene in it where we were jumping off a truck, I think, in like training. And he was like, oh, would you use like the word no passing on? And I was like, you know what? So I didn't even think of that because I knew what it meant, like they shall not pass or, they can't pass like the fascista. So I was like, oh yeah. But anyway, long story short, we never ended up doing it. And then I remembered it when we were doing the bank, and I went, this is perfect. This is perfect to say. Because I think there was a line, and it went like, it was a while, I think, what did I say now? It was like, this is something like, this is fascist government money, lads, or something, remember that? And then, because that was originally Paddy May's line, and the beauty with Rogue is that sometimes we'll go around and be like, it's not really a gym line, or we'll throw it, the Reds will have that, or, give it to, and, that was Paddy, and then Jack was like, oh, not, it's a bit of a Dave line, that, don't you think? And I'm like, yeah, come on, I'll have that. So I said that, and then I just went, yeah, perfect, yeah, no pasarán, as in like, yeah, because we're taking the fascist government money. So yeah, and it's taken back to Dave's time in Spain. So yeah, that was something that was, yeah, I didn't think no one has ever clocked onto that, but yeah, it's more testament to Tom Shanklin, but it was 2 years later I actually ended up saying it in the show. But in terms of other ad-libs, you've got me, I'm trying to think now, because I say that many that don't make it in. So, do you know what I mean? There was one in the second season that I was quite proud of. I think it was when the fight in the Ritz happens, right? Bottle and Marine. And I think I just say to Reg, I owe you the stout, Reg. And yeah, that made it in. So that was quite nice. But yeah, I'm trying to think if there's any more that made it in. There's a few there, but I just can't think off the top of my head. What was it? There's another one when Reg comes with the donkey. And I just say, oh, you found your missus of your Reg or something. I can't remember. It's just like, you know what I mean? But I'm trying to find, because he was a bloke's bloke, as my daughter said. So it was that type of, camaraderie and, banter and yeah. So yeah, the ad-libs, yeah, there's plenty of them in there, and yeah. So
I think that's the kind of thing that sort of really brings it to life, isn't it? I thought, we all thought that season 2 had some fantastic relationship moments, and it's the small things like that really make it.
Yeah. It just shows you that, that we are a group, and it is Rogue Heroes is a job that I've never worked on like it before. You know what I mean? In terms of a brotherhood, and in terms of, because it's a tough job. Like it's not an easy shoot. Them they're really, really hard, because there's a lot of repetitiveness, and especially with the battle scenes. You film it for 8 hours, and it's again and again and again and again. And I remember saying to me dad, I was like, just have to do it again. Oh, come on, son, think about the real fellas. I went, well, I only had to do it once, and it was done. And then we've got to do it over again. I said, a battle lasts 20 minutes at best. It's a sequence. Anyway, you know what I mean? It was sort of that. He was like, oh, no deal. But yeah, it's an amazing experience for a World War II geek like myself to be a part of. And I don't think I'll ever work on a job. Well, I won't, because I'm my age, but I'm not getting any younger. But I think, as the years go on, for that period in time at that age, I think we started doing that when I was like 27, 20. I'm 32 now, so yeah, it's like, yeah, it's something I'm really proud of, and it's so well cast as well. Like everyone sort of fits their role spot on, you know. And I can't. You got to give testament to the people, you know, the producer Stephen Smallwood and, excuse me, Tom Shankland, who was the first season director, who had a lot to do with that, and you know, kudos all them. So, and Stephen Knight, you know, they all obviously just went right. Well, I think there was a brilliant thing that Stephen Knight said in the Guardian or a paper, and he was like, we need these people, you know, sometimes don't really fit in society, and that, at that time, like, so you needed a bunch against, you know, a bunch of misfits that don't really fit into society, and we needed actors that were a bit like that. And you know, I might sound like I'm coming across quite, but you know, quite reserved and that. But we're all. I think there is an element to that to Rogue, like in terms of the cast. I've never worked in a cast like it before, where we are all a bit bonkers. So I think that's what makes it. Yeah,
That works.
yeah.
In terms of sort of more meaty stuff that Dave gets to do, we were thinking about the confession scene, particularly in season 2, where we get to see a little bit more of Dave's sort of emotional reaction. And I guess it's all that series of sort of more exploring the trauma of it all. How did you approach sort of portraying that, carrying that of it all, Dave?
I mean, it was a beautifully written scene. Like, you know, when you get something like that on the page and you look at it, and you know, as an actor, it's a dream to really. I mean, yeah, it's a dream to sort of get the opportunity to perform that, something like that. So, for me as an actor, the process, you know, it was. I like to. It's a bit of an in-depth question. It must sound really clever now and artistic, but. You see, I'm not. You know what I listened to a lot while I was doing that particular series to really get me in the mood was two things actually. I watch the scene, which always makes me really well up. There's a scene in Saving Private Ryan, and there's not much that gets said in it, and it's just when the priest and one of the army officials knocks on his mum's door, and she just sits down. And when she sits down, because she's just realised that, you know, she knows there's no dialogue, but that scene in particular just always makes me go, oof. There's something about it so powerful because there's no dialogue, but it's just like the beauty of the shot behind the mother sitting down is just like, wow, it's just. So that was something that I used to watch a bit, and there's a song as well, which is in Ken Burns' Civil War, and it's in the opening in the first episode, and it's just violins, and it just really gets me in a mood and a sort of space where I think I need to be to really go there. And I think also doing you know, the stuff on the boat really helped. I don't know if he shot that after that scene. I can't really remember. But putting Dave in that situation and what he's like, and you know, trying to keep it. Well, we done a lot of this. That's not what we did. We did do a lot of, you know, the stuff in. I can't remember what, 4 or 5, where it's the grave scene and stuff, and you know, all that was shot previous to that, and seeing Theo's journey really helped me, and seeing where Reg went, because I'm really close to Theo as a friend, and to sort of see that and what he went through as an actor, you know, to get himself in sort of dark places, and you know what Reg was going through. I thought a lot of Reg. I thought about Reg and what he was going through, and that really got me to there as well, because it's, you know, it's a moment in time in history where, you know, people never really spoke about mental health or PTSD. It wasn't talked about. It was something that was just like, oh, you know, pull your socks up and get on with it, lads. So, you know what I mean? And it was like, I thought a lot about my Nana Joan. God rest her soul. She, you know, I remember her telling me about stories about the Blitz in Liverpool and the walls were coming in, and just sort of really, yeah, just taking a moment and a time to have a little think of that before going in and yeah, and doing that scene really. So yeah, I mean, I hope we did a good job, but you know, it's one of them. You just sort of crack on and do it. But like, yeah, it was that was what how I approached to it anyway. Yeah.
You did a good job.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It means a lot. Thank you.
That was beautiful. So how do you even decompress then after that?
Well, I think when I finished that scene anyway, I was just really happy it was out of the way, to be honest. I was happy it was out of the way. I mean, it's not, and since then, I've you know, I've played characters that are far more in a darker situation than them. And, you know, and not to say what he went through was minute, but I've played characters previous to that have been in dark places, and I've played characters after that have been in dark places, but because he was a real person, and I just wanted to do it justice, you know what I mean? And what really, one of his daughters messaged me, and she was like, I'll love it, and it's just took me a bit of time to decompress it myself. You know, that's what she said, because I got in touch, funny enough, when we were first starting to do it in 2021, I got in touch with the Imperial War Museum because there was voice clips of Dave, and they weren't sharing them all, and I got in touch with them and like, is it okay if I listen to them? And they were like, no. And I was like, well, why not? But anyway, they never let me. But about a year later, they released them all. So they obviously didn't know about the show. The show come out and then released them all. So by season 2, we had this material there, you know, and a few of the lads were like, they were like, oh, have you seen these? And I was like, hang on a minute, lads. I was the one who sorted this out. I measured them saying that. And then, you know what I mean? I was like, hang on a minute. And I went through all of it. But anyway, yeah, so, you know, she was sorted because I sent her the voice clips of her dad talking about it. And yeah, so, yeah, that was it, really. I think to decompress, really, from that, it was... it's a funny one because when you finish a job, when you're on it for that long, I think when I first started acting, it was quite hard for me to really decompress from work because you make such a good solid bond with these people that you work with, and then you never see them again. Like the majority of the time, especially in the acting game, like you be and you're in, and then wow, everyone's gone, and then so that for me was really hard when I first started acting, but to then, you know, it's still a brotherhood. So yeah, it's nice to still keep in touch with people. But so yeah, to decompress from it was it was just a nice feeling to really get that out of the way and to crack on, you know, playing Dave and having a laugh type of thing, you know. Yeah, so
that works too. I've got one sort of final question before I hand you over to Matcha. And it's a much lighter question than that, which was just, if you could ask the real men of the SAS a question, whether it's Dave or not, is there something that you'd love to ask them?
Just, you know what, I've never actually, that's something that's never come to my mind. If I ever had to ask them. I think I'd be scared to ask them, to be honest. I think I'd be like, I'd be starstruck if I ever got the chance to meet them. Would there be a question? Can't think of one. Can't think of one off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
That's fair enough. That's absolutely fair enough. You can chew on it for a while.
Yeah, I'll think about it, and yeah, it's like margins. I have got the question. Yeah.
But yeah, that's it for me.
So I'll just kind of make a little bit of a switch and get into more of the actory stuff with you for a second, because I'm a nerd like that.
Right.
Although, to be honest, this question is not very actory, but has working on Rogue changed your perspective of the war at all?
No, it hasn't changed my perspective on it, because I've always researched it and knew a lot about it. I mean, perspective, no, just it sort of made me think. Well, yeah, I suppose it's made me really think about what my nan's generation went through, and that generation, you know, from yeah, that changed your perspective on it, and it's made me really reflect on,
Just
could our generation hack it if it happens? You know what I mean? Like, I don't, you know what I mean? It's like we live in such a different time now, on a different world to what it was back then. It just makes me really, really appreciate what they went through to give people the opportunity to have a voice. You know what I mean? And it's just like to get, for everyone to come together to fight against it, evil as it was. Well, it is. It's absolute, just despicable, like, Nazism and National Socialism as an ideal, and fascism. It's just like, it's beyond comprehension. And it only gives you a moment's thought to really think how ridiculous it is, because it's just evil. There's no other way to describe it apart from evil. And it made me really think that, in the face of a majority of of hatred, there's always people there that will stand up against that, and that makes me feel proud. That makes me feel really proud, like, especially of my nan's generation, and to see what because I'm of a generation that I do remember them speaking about the war, but it's, I don't know, it's just, I just think they were made of different stuff back then. Like, I really do. I think it was just, I think it's you look at these people and you feel inspired, and you just, yeah. So that's probably what, in terms of changing my perspective, it made me really reflect a lot more on that generation.
Obviously, Rogue appeals to a lot of different kind of people, but also a lot of younger people. So what do you hope that they take away from a show like SAS?
just
What do I hope that? I mean, overall, like, I hope they get enjoyment from it, because that's why we do it. It's entertainment, and I'm an actor, so I hope they find it, an escapism to what their reality is, if it's a bad sort of situation that they're in. So I hope that people get that from it. But also, more or less to what I was saying before, in terms of me reflecting on that generation, that I hope people do sort of look at,
just
I don't know, reflect, look into the history of it and the background of the Second World War, and why it was really fought, instead of people just sort of saying, "Oh, because Hitler was bad." But when you actually look at the, the nuts and bolts of the politics of it, of just hating people because of the, of their beliefs, or the colour, or the disabilities. You know what I mean? Like, really I hope people get that from it, to look. I hope someone somewhere, I'm sure they have, really looked into it and went, "Well, these people were bad." And it's not to say, a lot of people, the majority of people know that the Nazis were bad. That's just a given. But really, to find out what their political ideology, and in terms of the propaganda that went behind it, and to sort of reflect on that, and to look at sort of today's society as well. And you do get people trying to manipulate people, or getting people's sort of belief systems, and blame people that are just there to be blamed, because they're not the majority. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. For people who've not seen the show, if there was one scene that you could recommend them to watch, which would it be, and why?
So many good scenes in it, man. There's so many good scenes. There's one scene that I love watching, but I don't know if it's just me. I just love watching the scene. There's two. I mean, there's one in episode. There's two in season 2. I've started to think on season 2 in season 1. I'm starting to think in season 2. What? But in season 1, I love the scene when Connor, or Sterling, and Lewis and Maine are arguing with the sort of RAF flight to go out and do Operation Squatter. And there's a line in it, and I think it's testament to Bags, really, to Ben Simmons, because there's a line in it when he says, it ends with Rommel rolling his panzers up the mall, up to, something like that. It ends with rolling his pants up the mall towards Buckingham Palace. And you think, wow, like to get someone in a sense of like, if you don't do this, like it's done. Like it will end with that. And that was something that really like that really stuck with me as a line. And even when I watched it, I got emotional and being like, wow, like he'd be like, oh, like yeah, because he was so close to even, you know, I think it was what was Operation Sea Lion when they were going to invade Britain. I mean, it wasn't for the RAF that it stopped the invasion of Britain, but that line in particular, it just always gets me. I think, what? That scene, I love that scene, and I love the scene when what's the other scene now? What's the other scene? There's another scene as well. There's actually another two scenes. There's a scene with Maine and. So you've only told me to pick one, and I'm just reeling off a load now. There's another scene, a lovely scene with Jack and Connor, where they're in the tent, and he's reflecting on Erin McGonagall, and he just says, you know, he says like, I can't remember what the line was, but he sort of just says like, you know, I can't get him out of him yet. And I remember just thinking, just touched me so much, man. Like I was like, that's like. You know, to see Paddy May like being this crazy like Irish guy, right? You get over there and like oh no and all that, and then to see him like that in the tent with Sterling, it just that really affected me. I thought that was a really powerful scene, and then there's just that one for season 2. And I forgot what it was now. I was going to do than that. That was it. They're all quite depressing, the scenes I'm picking. Well, apart from the one where they go and tell him to jump. There's a scene with Paddy and Reg in episode, I can't remember. It's just when Reg just went through it and he just says, you know, we get up and we go again. And I think that was a beautiful scene. I think that was where he's sitting in the chair and he offers him William Blake or sold him some, I don't know, some sort of barbiturate or some some sort of sedative. And I thought that was a beautiful scene as well in season 2. That really touched me.
Just that none of these are your scenes.
No, I'm not like, I can't, I just sound like a massive narcissist every scene I'm in. But like, yeah, scenes I'm not in. Like, they're the scenes that really stood out to me as a you know, a World War II geek. But yeah, but no, I'll say the confession scene and I'll say it, you know, when Dave comes into the tent and says hello.
The Dave supercut, that's what you'd show them, right?
Yeah.
It would have been great if you'd started listing them, but like not set up top that they were all the Dave scenes. And as you were listing them, we were like, aren't those all the Dave scenes?
Yeah, this guy's a dick.
Do you have a favorite scene that you filmed?
I was in.
Yes.
Favorite scene I filmed. You know, because every day is just like every day on that job is just a dream come true. I'm not saying that being like, you know, phony. That's the God's honest truth for me. It is like a, you know, a scene that I really loved. Okay. Scene what I think was the first season, and it was when me, Paddy, and Reg go into the hut and just shoot all the German pilots. And I don't know what it was, but I think it was just something about it that. I don't know, I think because it was one of the first days on set, they had the adrenaline running high, and it was just, that was a moment that stuck out to me. But because I'm a bit mad, I go in, and I remember going, like doing the gun noises, and the director was like, yeah, you don't need to do the gun noises, man, we've got, you know, because I was just like in the scene, just like being a little kid going, just like actually doing the gun noises, but that sticks out to me, not purely because of the violence, just because of the atmosphere we were in and because I was a part of this amazing job that I love to be a part.
It's like doing the lightsaber sound if you're in Star Wars.
Yeah. But also, actually, you know what? It is literally like doing the... But you know what other scene I really like being a part of was the scene when Lewis is dead and Corin comes back, Jim Owens comes back and tells Sterling. I love being a part. I love watching that because that really, watching that was. I felt proud to be a part of that scene. You know, I don't know why. It's just because it's such a pinnacle moment in you know the SAS history. You know, Jock Lewis is gone, and you know him to come back, and Jim Owens, who's like a gentleman, you know what I mean? And him to sort of confront Sterling was like, wow, because it's your fault we're dead. It's your fault because we can't pick him up because you've told us not to. That was a scene I was quite proud to be a part of. I enjoy being a part of. Yeah, definitely. I mean, the battle scenes are fun. Of course, they're fun. Like it's a good laugh. But them scenes. Yeah, the first one because I remember that was on the first days, and that one, yeah, in the desert, definitely.
If you could play any other character on SAS, who would it be?
Whoa. Eve.
She has great outfits. That's an excellent choice.
Oh, mate, she looks cool. She looks cool every time she's on screen. So absolutely smashes it. I don't know, I just think it's a cool character. I love Eve. But what, a male character? No, I'd like to play Eve, but I'm not a female. I don't know. I mean, who's who I like? You know who I liked? I really liked Arthur, who played. He was one of the French lads in the first season. Yeah, I liked his character, but I think I'm content playing Dave, man. I love playing Dave, and I'm proud to play Dave. So I'm gonna say Dave. I'm gonna say I can't pick from Dave, but if I had to pick anyone, yeah, Dave. Yeah.
Dave all the way.
Maybe Dudley Clark. I don't know. Yeah.
That would be a fun role.
Yeah, brilliant role.
Was there anything that you either filmed or that was on the script that didn't make it into the show that you wish had?
I think there was. You know what? I think there was a bit. If I remember rightly, I might be getting it wrong, but I think in one of the first earlier drafts of the second season, there was a scene on it where it was a good chunk of, like, I don't know if it was the episode when we're attacking. I can't really remember how it worked, but it's obviously been chopped and changed and everything's moved about. But one of the first earlier drafts, there was a good part of the Italians, or I think it was the Germans or something, and it was mainly focused on them. And it was like a good start to the episode where they're chilling and talking and cracking on, and then the assault happens. I thought that was a really, really clever idea, but they obviously went a different way. I mean, it was great what they did anyway, but I just remember thinking, oh, that's a shame that, because you could have had like really cool Italian actors and, you know, just doing scenes, cracking on, and people are like, what's going on, it's Rogue Heroes, and then boom, you know, like 25 pages in, we just all turn up and splash the gaff up. But yeah, I thought that was a really, really clever idea, but they just never done it, no.
Anything that you learned about Dave that you wish had made it into the show? If anything.
Didn't really know Dave. I don't know, maybe I've sort of got little tiny bits of the Spanish Civil War thing in, but only very minute. Maybe a little bit, such a little bit more on his socialist side. I don't know, maybe a scene, something to work in there that to speak about his previous conflict. I think it'd be quite nice. Yeah.
We talked to Terry, who is a crowd customer for SAS Rogue Heroes on season 2, and she said that you wore a medal that Dave got.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I'm curious.
Yeah, it was it was for the Republican volunteer medal that was like awarded to foreign fighters that went and volunteered and fought against Franco. And I thought that'd be a really nice touch to have on his uniform. And I think Bags was no, I don't think that's not necessary, because we've got everybody's medals, and I was like, no, Bags, come on, man, chill out. Like, I'm having it on my uniform because he fought the Spanish Civil War. No one else did. Yeah, that's a big part of someone's background. And if someone's going to volunteer to go over and fight against in a foreign country, that's a big part of his background. So just a little salute to that. So yeah, I had like I bought it myself online. It was obviously a replica. But yeah, I bought it. Yeah, it was a little medal that was awarded to Spanish Civil War veterans who were in the volunteer forces, the Republican side. And so I had that on my costume. I was proud to wear that. I mean, if you look really closely, you might see it in one or two in the scene in the Ritz. But no, it just something, a little salute to the Spanish Civil War. Yeah.
And I have a nice segue from this question, actually, because I was wondering if you had taken anything from set, like any costuming or accessories, or have you got anything?
I've got me beret. From the second season. Me red beret, I've got that. I kept that. Anything else? No, that's it really. That's the only thing I've got.
It's a good one, though.
You are? It's a good one, no, it's cool. It's cool. I think a few of the lads have got the battle dress, the battle jacket. But to be completely honest, I'm glad to see the back of it when I finish it, because it's quite warm in the costumes. So I don't want it. Yeah, I'm like, oh, but no, I've kept me beret. I wish you would have kept the sand coloured beret, but I never did. I'm gutted I never kept that.
So, are there any funny or intense or memorable moments from set that you remember that you look back on fondly?
And that was going on, chef, funny. Oh. My mind's gone blank because we're talking like 2 years ago and then 4 years ago. And it was funny. There was though, because we just laugh when we do that job. It's just such a good laugh. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. Honestly, it's doing me head in. Anything funny?
Do you feel like you're in a job interview?
You what? Sorry.
Do you feel like you're in a job interview?
Nah. I'm loving this. I'm loving this conversation. It's boss. And that was funny. Oh.
Let me rephrase this question. Did you ever get in trouble on set?
I get in trouble everywhere I go, but I'm not going to say what it was, because I feel embarrassed and ashamed. It wasn't nothing that bad. But yeah, no, it's, I mean, what you'd expect. It's a show full of young lads who are all, are being picked because we're a bit nuts. So yeah, I'm trying to think if I've ever been in trouble. There's always something. I can't think off the top of my head, honestly. Yeah, I can't think. Yeah,
This isn't Ben's question.
Go on.
Ben sent this in.
You what?
He said to me, you need to ask him if he's been in trouble on set.
Yeah, of course he'd ask that question. Of course he would. Yeah, I'm always getting in trouble. I always am. I try to be behaved, but I'm a very enthusiastic little boy on that job. So I'm just, I'm forever getting in trouble. I don't know what over, but I think that's just been most of my life. I've always been getting in trouble, but it becomes the norm. You know what I mean? Oof. Yeah, me and Bags, I love him to bits, but we have a bit of a mad relationship because he sort of likes to. Yeah, I remember I'm insistent that I keep my MP40. It's just like, no, I've kept my MP40 like I'm, which is the German submachine gun. He's like, well, no, I think you should switch to a Thompson. I mean, I'm not. No, I'm keeping my MP40. I robbed it off a fascist. I'm going to kill fascists with it. So standard. And like I've had that since like season 1. So I'm like, no, that's it. I'm keeping it. But in terms of getting in trouble, probably too much ad-libbing. Yeah, I try and be very respectful and not stand over anyone's lines, but yeah, I try my best. Yeah, I try my best to really behave on that job because I don't want to lose it because it's something I love. But yeah.
Well, thanks for that. I'm letting you off the hook now, and I'm handing you over to Sam. She's much nicer than me.
Nah, you're right.
So I'm also a big Band of Brothers fan. Obviously, and a piece of American war media. I'm Canadian, and there are not a ton of Canadian war stories depicted on screen. I'm also a big fan of women's history, of course. We talk about that a lot on the podcast, and also tends to be a little overlooked in terms of World War II history. So definitely as a World War II nerd, there's tons of stuff that I would love to see on screen. And I was wondering if there's any World War II story or person that you would love to bring to life.
World War II person love to see brought to life. Wow. I know I've got someone there. I know because I know I have, but I can't. I feel like such a bad person to go on this podcast because I'm just going, I don't know.
You'll remember as soon as we stop recording, you'll remember everything.
I know, and then I'll be like, person I'd like to see brought to life. Well, because most of them have already been brought to life. I mean, I'd like to see. You know what I think would be interesting. Probably, I'd like to see sort of a story on Emile Maurice. You know who he is? Emile Maurice was SS member number 2, but he actually had a Jewish mother. And I always found his story quite fascinating because you never really hear much about him. He initially went out with Gayle Rabo, which was Hitler's niece, and he sacked him because he was his driver. But like he had his mother was Jewish, and he was SS member number 2. So I always found his story overlooked a bit, and I'm like, I'd like to find more out about him, or even. There was another, I sound like I'm just naming Nazis now, but there was another guy called Walter Schellenberg as well, who actually went out with Coco Chanel. And I'd like to see something made about that and to be like, well, where did she stand on it? You know what I mean? Like, I'd like to see what her sort of, because, let's be honest, a lot of people didn't know what was going on. It was just not talked about or not discussed because of the totalitarian dictator, the Nazi or what I mean. So I'd like to see a Coco Chanel type of biopic around her relationship with Walter Schellenberg. I think that'd be quite interesting because no one's really there's talks of it, it's never really been touched on. You know what I mean? Well, see, they're coming out now. I'm getting a few coming out. Who else? There's more. There's definitely more. Who else? I feel like I had someone else as well, but it's gone. It's gone. It'll probably come back to me midway through the next question. I'll be like, oh yeah, them. Well, yeah. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see that sort of talked about. But also, I think if I'd like to see the sort of the French resistance really come into it. You know what I mean? If France and stuff, I'd like to see that. Because they were a massive presence, and I don't want to get this wrong, but it's not the milice. The milice was Vichy France, wasn't it? It was the Marie. Was the Marie? Yeah, I'd like to see something touched upon that. Well, I think the Coco Chanel one I'd like to see. Yeah, because she's such a prominent, Chanel is everywhere now. You know what I mean? It's a very famous designer brand, but I'd like to see what she was. Yeah, her relationship with Walter Schellenberg, I think it'd be quite interesting to really say. Yeah.
Yeah, I get the sense that people probably avoid that because people like to have a sympathetic protagonist. It's a little difficult when it's a Nazi, I guess.
Yeah. But I mean, was she a Nazi? Do you know what I mean? Like, she was certainly dating one for a long time, and she paid for his funeral when he died penniless, and he ended up being a kitchen porter and back in Germany, and I think he was under Reinhard Heydrich as well. You think how didn't he get done in Nuremberg? You're like, hang on a minute, you know what I mean? I think there's a lot of I think, and plus the fact because Chanel is such a prominent brand and obviously has a lot of power because it's very maybe someone sort of stopping that story getting made because of that reason. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, let's briefly talk season 3. Do you have any big hopes for season 3? Anything you'd like to see from Dave? Anything in particular you're looking forward to? You just mentioned the French resistance. I'm sure we'll see the SAS working with them a little bit.
And just to sort of Yeah, to see. I think there's a story I heard as well, but I think that happened in Italy where apparently Paddy Mayne robbed a train and went into a concentration camp, which is that's a story, but that happened in Italy, and we never touched on that on season 2. But yeah, just I'd like to see. I think it'd be quite cool to see the French resistance come into it, and yeah, that's it really. I mean, just to sort of see where that angle goes. But I'm sure whatever Stephen Knight comes up with, it'll be brilliant anyway. But yeah, that's what I'd like to do. I'd like to see them. But I think, I mean, come on, we're in France. It's going to happen, in it really. You can't do that and not have them. You know what I mean? Like, he sort of touched on it very minute in the second season with the Italians, but the French resistance was such a prominent part, fighting the Nazis behind enemy lines. Like, I'd love to. You know what? I'd like to see. I don't know, someone getting brought to justice who's like, part of Vichy France, the milice. You know what I mean? Because it was just shit houses. Like, I'd like to see something happen there. I don't know if it will happen, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it should be a huge season anyway, with the cliffhanger ending on D-Day, and I think probably the Normandy landings would be the part of World War II that most people are eminently familiar with. So it's going to be pretty massive, anyways.
Yeah. No, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah.
Do you have any songs that you would love to see on the soundtrack for season 3 that you think would be a good fit?
You know what? I was listening to a song today. What was it about? The Looking Glass by the Lars. I think that'd be a good song. That I think none of you know. With the Lars are like Liverpool, I'm from Liverpool, but they sort of only done one album. The lead singer, Liam Mathers, I think he was a very bad heroin addict, but it's a brilliant album. But there's a song called The Looking Glass that I think could really fit in it somewhere. So we had The Looking Glass by the Lars.
Add that to the playlist.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a running playlist. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any World War II books that you would recommend for people to read, perhaps from your large bookcase that we can see behind you?
There's that many of them I've got, to be honest. I'm trying to think of one that springs to mind. Not really. You know what? I'm going to say Mouse. I don't know if I've ever heard you read Mouse.
I read it a while ago. It's very powerful. I'm
going to say Mouse because I think Mouse it's an amazing, it's a graphic novel. So if you struggle with, reading just line after line, then I think Mouse is a really good sort of World War II book. I think it's just an amazing story about hardship and what his father went through. I think it's incredible. So Mouse, I'd say Mouse.
Yeah, that's a great rec. Is there anything you want to talk about we haven't talked about, or anything you'd like to plug? Any upcoming projects?
I'm not one for plugging like other jobs I'm on. I can't do that. I get all cringy out. Oh yeah, my name is Bobby Schofield. I'm in this. It reminds me of Troy McClure, like in The Simpsons. I'm like, I was in that. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Bobby, for being on. This has been a blast. We've had a nice long conversation here, so it was great.
No, it was my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on, and hopefully you've got enough there of me rambling on about stuff. So
absolutely. No, that's exactly that's our brand. All we do is ramble about history and all kinds of stuff. So it was great. It was perfect.
Well, thank you very much, and nice one for having me on. Thank you. Have you had much? You've had Bags on, haven't you? And have you had Corin on? You've had Corin.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who else have you had on? You're not getting anyone else on, or?
We haven't had any other actors on, but we had Terry on who did the costuming, and hopefully there'll be more actors. We're open to it for sure.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Well, thank you very much for having me on. It was a pleasure speaking to fellow geeks.
Glad you had a good time.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, George, for coming on again and sharing your knowledge with us.
Always. I love it.
And thank you, everyone, for listening to another episode of Rosie the Reviewer. You can find us wherever you get your podcast. You can rate us 5 stars. You can send this episode to a friend. You can visit our website, rosieTheReviewer.com, or you can follow us on Instagram at Rosie the Reviewer Podcast. See you next week.
Thank you for listening.
just
Thank you.